Our TVC News Correspondent Joseph Kunde is joining me from Bayelsa, Yenagoa, Bayelsa. Joseph, we saw a bit of a brawl between or among political party members who are monitoring the Collation Center, who are there right there in the Collation Center. Talk to us about what transpired. Exactly what are they arguing about?
Some parties are still feeling like they are shortchanged in the sense that they claim that when it comes to results here being collated, it's not where people have to now start. INEC shouldn't be addressing concerns. They are used to the fact that whenever someone comes and, of course, lays a complaint or the other, they will always tell them it should be written down and all. Nobody tells them, nobody gives them a solution to most of these things that they always complain about. But a different ball game came about when the political party agents came up and said, accused one of other parties said that their deputy governorship candidates made mention of killing people and throwing them into the river. That was what escalated the whole scenario here. And of course, the person that they were referring to actually stood up and then gave him a slap, and that was why the place was a little bit tensed up. And of course, they had other agents also getting into the melee at some point. But apparently, the 1 hour break that was being called for by INEC is apparently needed because those tempers needs to be fled down a little bit more. And then also, as it is happening here, there are some parts of the state that is already combing up with some series of protests here and there based on what is happening in the Collation Center as we speak.
Those were strong allegations by that party agent. But then talk to us about how the police are trying to put these under control. We understand that the brawl continued outside of the Collation Center. How much are the police doing to ensure that there is peace?
Well, you would have been hearing gunshots from one way or the other, probably tear gas being thrown into the air if the police did not step in to quell down the tension a little bit more. Yes, they are still talking here and there, making some phone calls here and there, but the parties that are really involved at the moment, they've been able to take a breather, and of course they're trying to see if they could get to talk about it in another, probably they want to use the word in a gentleman's way, but the tempers are high, the tempers are flaring because of the outcome of the results that we are seeing here right now. 7 has been called out, the remaining 1, and that one is what a lot of persons are looking forward to because it's going to decide who the next governor of the state is going to be.
Well, we can see that the stakes are really high, but all of the journalists that are there, will just only advise that you stay safe. But in the meantime, what should we expect? The collation is bid to resume in about an hour's time. But then, what should we expect, from the collation, and how has it been the conduct? How has it been so far before the resumption earlier?
Everybody has been taken to the life of waiting for INEC to come through with whatever they are telling us about in terms of the procedures that needed to be taken, and that was why they were feeling like the parties were feeling shortchanged at some point because they felt the rule, or better still, the unwritten rule that was laid down by INEC, they couldn't follow it. That was why they had that mini area on board. That has been talked about, and of course the 1 hour break that INEC gave about was to enable them put themselves together, also see, because the truth of the matter is, yes, even though we are hearing that some persons, some of the material of Southern Nigeria is already here, we don't know how true that is, and that could give them a good time for them to gather their hearts together and, of course, get us to know what exactly the result is going to be from that particular local government area.
All right, TVC News, Joseph Kunde, thank you so much. Joseph Kunde joined us live from Yenagoa at the Collation Center. We've got Femi Lawson, who is joining me from Yenagoa still. But Femi, thank you so much for joining us on TVC News this time. What's your reading of the incident that transpired at the Collation Center where we had party agents who are accusing one another? One of them said that a life was lost in Brass local government area. And then the other party agent retorted saying that what the allegations were not true. How have you been monitoring the developments in the Yenagoa post-election or post-yes-election?
Well, post-election, there have been series of agitations here and there from yesterday morning. We woke up yesterday morning to resume the observation of the collation of the result at the inn, and that witnessed a huge protest by a group of women, young people from across the state who have stormed the INEC headquarters demanding cancellation of results in some part of the state, and also asking that INEC must not compromise their votes as have been delivered across the various local governments. So that process ran throughout yesterday. Even as at this morning, there are still a lot of crowd out at the INEC headquarters in Yenagoa of people monitoring how this collation exercise is going. We have also had pockets of protest in Brass, in Nimbe, and some other parts of the state where people are, of course, protesting against one form of decision or the other that have been taken in line with this election. But overall, it has been peaceful. The collation exercise has been smooth. And unfortunately, the unfortunate incidents we witnessed during the last minutes of the collation just about now was between an agent of one of the smaller political parties participating in the election, and of course, an agent of the All Progressive Congress, who, of course, protested against the claim by that first person that a life was lost in Brass. We had observers in Brass and some other local governments of the state, and there was no report of death as at the time our observers left Brass and other parts of the state where they observed the election. So I would want to assume that, of course, they also referred to certain statements that have been made prior to the election. If he was trying to say there were reported cases of violence, it must have been some tension that have been created prior to the election. And that was one of the reasons that were responsible for the shifting of the coalition from Brass, Nembe, and some, of course, Southern Niger to the headquarters of the INEC, as we have currently witnessed between yesterday and now.
Interesting. But then there's a lot of lessons for the Independent National Electoral Commission to have learned from the February and March election conducted earlier this year. Do you feel that most of the observations that were made by an election observer like you, do you feel that it was improved upon, the INEC improved upon its conduct for this off-cycle election, especially in Yenagoa where you've been?
Well, you must give credit to INEC for the speed with which INEC was able to deploy materials and personnel for this election. As at Friday night, that's hours before the opening of poll on Saturday, INEC have deployed materials into virtually all the registration areas in the state, and personnel were on ground across everywhere elections took place on Saturday. When you talk about logistic deployment and personnel, INEC did fantastic on Saturday. But one thing that is still of concern from our observation is the fact that INEC has not been able to win itself off completely from the influence of politicians who desperately seek to compromise the election at all times. And unfortunately, we also have some bad characters who are working with the commission, who conspire with some of these desperate politicians, like we witnessed in few situations in Bayelsa State. One would have expected that in parts of Nembe on Saturday, that INEC would not have been part of what happened, especially when the media, observers, and even some security agents were prevented from accessing communities where election was taking place. I don't see any reason why INEC would have allowed results from those kind of places where elections were almost conducted in a cover. So I would expect that INEC must do whatever it is necessary to ensure that the process becomes more transparent and people are seeing it. Until INEC begin to do that and allow itself not to be used, subjected to the, because what happened in Nembe, Basambri to be precise, was not an action taken by INEC. It was out of the desperation of politicians to prevent people from voting their choices, to prevent media from accessing the communities, to prevent observers. But INEC, still brought out results in the name of elections conducted in those places, and the whole thing on the RF. Embarrassingly, we are seeing where there were no accreditations and election results are appearing on the portal of INEC. I think that's very unfortunate.
Well, election observer Femi Lawson, there will be a lot to still talk to you about, especially post-elections generally, to seeing how the elections were conducted by the Independent National Electoral Commission and all of the things that transpired during this election. Thank you so much for your keenness of insight on this. Election observer Femi Lawson, thank you.
You're welcome.